Hey everybody, I'm on Kelp Street back, and today, as you can see, we're currently at a cemetery in Kansas. Because of today's topic of the video, if you've clicked on this video, you probably know already what it's about. We're going to be talking about posthumous albums, albums that have been released post the artist's death. And why this has come to my attention as a topic, if you've seen my most recent Friday wrap-up, was that Sophie, popular hyperpop and alt-pop artist, had died a few years ago, and her last album, self-titled, called Sophie, just came out, the 2024. As I record this, today's officially the first day of October, so happy spooky season. But Sophie's album came out September 25th, so at the very end of this most recent month. So I kind of wanted to go to a local cemetery and pay respects here, investigate around, see a cemetery I've never seen before that I live near, and kind of talk about posthumous albums in general, how I felt about this album, and why I feel like posthumous albums, no matter how they're delivered, just give me a bad taste in my mouth. So we're going to start with a review of just the Sophie album itself and then go on from there. I will say, given that I'm currently recording this video at a cemetery and I'm talking about dead artists, that this might not be the most jovial video I go over, but I'm just generally an upbeat person, so if I sound like in a certain way, I intend for this video, I'll say this outright, to be respectful and come off respectful to the people I'm talking about and to the people I reference. Just like how you go to a cemetery and respect the dead and respect the people that are there, I respect these artists and their artist death, and I don't blame any of the music that has come out post their death on the artists themselves. They weren't there to create it, they're not alive to defend it. So nothing I say in this video will be like a roasting critique of any of these albums. Just my initial thoughts and feelings on how I feel about dead artists releasing music, or the states of these artists, I'd rather much say, releasing music in behalf of their name. And as we go on, you're going to kind of understand that this is what I currently feel about posthumous albums, is that I feel like it's always a point on the estate. The estate is releasing music in the name of somebody else. And that's why it always has left a bad taste in my mouth, is that I don't understand why we should allow, like, outside of maybe certain people that are friends, like, even if a bigger artist dies, like, say today, like the second I record this video and upload it, say the day after The Weeknd dies, I would still feel, even if there's completed songs of his work, I would still feel off about his family and his estate releasing music by The Weeknd. It just wouldn't feel right to me. I feel like we should let him rest and let his body of work rest. And that's kind of how I feel about this Sophie album. While good in chunks, it's 16 songs long, it's roughly like an hour and 7 minutes, a little over an hour. The whole first 4 tracks just do not feel completed and do not feel right. We have Intro, the full horror, just an instrumental intro track. Raw, which felt like a trap cover of what a Sophie beat normally is in her older stuff. Plunging Asymptote, which was a horrible song to me. It just felt so Frankenstein together. The Dome's Protection, which was a little better. And then the first song I actually liked, called Reason Why, with Kim Petras and BC Kingdom. This was dropped as one of the singles for the album. I See Why. It's one of the best tracks on the album. Still not like blow away good. The next 3 tracks are my favorite out of this first half. Living My Truth, featuring BC Kingdom again. Why Lies, featuring BC Kingdom again, and Liz on these last 2. Do You Want to Be Alive, featuring Big Sister, which still wasn't a highlight, but was okay. What I came away from this first half realizing was I like BC Kingdom as an artist, but Sophie feels so absent, even in the beat structure. Like, some of the beats get close to what I would consider a Sophie album, but not anything I would consider to be good enough to be on a Sophie album. And a full album release. So it did not feel, on the A side of this album, it did not really drag me in outside of the features like BC Kingdom and Liz. We have a big gap of songs I care about, from Elegance, Berlin Nightmare, Gallop, One More Time. And then we finally get the last 4 tracks I also like. Exhilarate, featuring BB Burelli. Always and Forever, featuring Hannah Diamond. Hannah Diamond, another big ongoing hyperpop artist. I highly recommend her. Hyperpop, alt pop, electric pop. Track 15, My Forever, was Cecile Believe, and track 16, Love Me Off Earth, featuring Doss. Love Me Off Earth was the last song, and it was a good send-off, a good wholesome send-off. Like, I think, like most of the lyrics in the song are just like, I want you to love me off Earth. And it's a good wholesome way to end off, good safe way to end off the album. But in general, out of 16 songs, I only liked 8, and the 8 I liked weren't things that I wouldn't play outside of a playlist shuffle. So this is what kind of sparked this video for me, to talk about how I feel like we should let dead artist music rest. I feel like once an artist dies, we should, whether streaming, album releases, vinyl releases, whatever, that is the cap on their discography. That is it. That they're no longer alive to make new things. That is it. Anything left behind was in the drafts for a reason. It was never meant to be released. So I feel like there's a lot of artists as we go on throughout the years that, like, a good example of this is Drake featuring Michael Jackson on his album Scorpion. Scorpion had Michael Jackson featured long past his death. And the song even was okay, but it wasn't even that good. Like, you hear it and you're like, oh, they really had to edit this to make Michael Jackson sound like he belongs in like the late 2010s. And, you know, I'll kind of repeat a few things in this video, but that's just kind of how I feel, is that once an artist dies, that should be the cap on their music. You shouldn't just let their estate and let people in their life keep dropping music or handing off verses or letting them be features on people they might never talk to. I can't imagine a lifetime where Drake and Michael Jackson would have been friends. Like, maybe it would have existed, but we will never know that. And I don't think we're ever meant to know that. So, you know, that's just kind of how I come away from these type of projects and samples and collabs, feeling like. But this ultimately brought me to how I want to go over a kind of history of posthumous releases, and that's why the topic of this video kind of pivoted to this, was that I just had more to say about the Sophie album and about this drop than I really felt I would. Not in a parasocial way. I don't feel like I'm connected or know Sophie in any way. I know parasocial is kind of a newer word in people's lives and on YouTube and on the internet and things like that, so I'll term it out here. The term parasocial means like you feel like you're socially connected or know a person who you've never met in person, whether it be like digitally or content creator, YouTuber, a famous person like Gordon Ramsay, Steve Harvey, things like that. When in actuality you consume their media, but you don't know anything about them personally, you just know what they present to the camera. And I don't feel like I'm near big enough to ever to really have that type of connection with any of my fans, but if you're parasocial with a person that you've never met online, just understand that unless you've DM'd them or called them or talked to them in person, you don't know them, you don't know their actual life, you just know what they present to the camera, and the camera can be very much edited, very much construed to the best of themselves. Typically that's what we all put on the internet and online anyways, we just put the best of ourselves. So you just understand that there's also the worst of people, or the medium of people. So there's a lot of facets to people's lives. And I've seen talk online for Sophie in this newest album about people are like, wow, these fans are so parasocial. And I think that's not fair to say for one of the first and only projects we get post her death. I feel like people are just grieving. It's renewing a grieving process by having this album out. And that's another reason why I feel like we should not drop posthumous albums. I feel like it just reopens a grieving process for the people who do listen to it, who knew them in their life. It doesn't, like, it could maybe bring comfort to be like, okay, this is their last project, this is it. But, you know, like Mac, we'll get to it here and move on to just part 2. Mac Miller in 2020, he dropped the album Circles post his death, his estate released an album, and that was an incredible album. Something I still think about all the time. And the reason why I felt like it made so much sense for Mac Miller was because his estate and family who dropped the music, who dropped the last album, Circles, in 2020, talked about how he always had these albums, 2 albums considered to be sister companion albums that were going to be released, Swimming and Circles, from the term Swimming in Circles. So it made so much sense to me to drop this as a companion piece, and we haven't got anything that wasn't a remaster since, which I think is the perfect move to do. My favorite tracks on Circles, if you want to know, this will be like a mini review here, will be Complicated, Blue World, Good News, I Can See, Woods, That's On Me, Hands, Surf, and the deluxe song Floating. I feel like those are my key tracks to take away from Mac Miller's Circles. But all his music in the last 4 years of his life were very, and even earlier in his music, like watching movies with the sound off and things like that, Mac Miller was always a person who talked about death, talked about how he pictured himself dying, how he pictured his family grieving for him. He had lines through it all through his discography. So it made a lot of sense to me to do a drop like this, even though I still feel a bit of mixed feelings about it. I still feel like we should have capped off his career at Swimming, even though I like the album Circles. That's where I just kind of stand with it, like that a dead artist has no say in whether they want this music out or not. In companion pieces like this, with Circles and Swimming, it makes sense because they are companion pieces. But this is one of the only outliers on this list we're going to talk about today that makes sense to me. Next up, we're going to do a twofer here. We're going to knock out two artists who also fall into this category of posthumous album releases, Juice WRLD and XXXTentacion. Juice WRLD's been having posthumous releases since 2018 on features, on albums, and multiple different things. It feels just as slimy to me. They need to stop it. His estate needs to stop it. XXXTentacion, same reason. 2018, he dropped the album. His family dropped the album Skins. If anyone's online enough and follows his music and is a big fan, they probably know that people are upset with his estate and his family for continuing to drop music and continuing to hand out verses like to Lil Wayne and other people to like just feature posthumously, even up until last year, 2023. I'm pretty sure he dropped his estate dropped a feature that ended up on another album. So he still has new content being put out to this day. And we're gonna start building our way back from the 2010s all the way into the 2010 album Michael by Michael Jackson. We talked earlier in this video about how Michael Jackson was featured on a Drake song in the late 2010s. Well, Michael Jackson died late 2000s, and his first album dropped posthumously was the album Michael in 2010, which is still considered to be, by his fans and people I see online at least, to one of his worst albums, which just stands to show. Continue to drop music after a person's dead, they don't have a quality control for what they would want on their album. The oldest we're going to get in this video, I'm going to kind of speed through these last two because I haven't listened to these last three albums. But in 1996, one of the earliest and most famous reviews and album drops of a posthumous artist was Tupac. So in 1996, Tupac had a planned album to drop after his death, The Dawn Killuminati, The Seventh Day. And this was a very famous, and still is a very famous posthumous album because he had planned on this. He wanted this album to drop after he died. And it really shook the world up with theories for years on that Tupac was still alive. He was just hiding somewhere, like on an island or something, which isn't true. We know he's dead. We know he got shot between the feud with him and Biggie. Rest in peace to both of them. Both famous artists in their own right. But still, people who defined the 90s, but Tupac is somebody who I really respect as an online socialist, somebody who is a musician who's a socialist, very openly about it. I'm sad he's gone, but this was a cool idea for an album to have it planned to drop. Change location here to kind of like give some people that are in the cemetery their privacy, and I very much want to respect that. So yeah, people who are out here paying respects, I'm going to be respectful to them as well, because I'm also out here paying respects and filming, and I don't want to be rude to people who don't want to be in film. So we were talking about the Tupac posthumous release, The Dawn Killuminati. This was a weird release, but respectful to plan something out like this. The only thing left I had to cover was the earliest example I could find, at least my personal research. If you see anything else, if you do your own research, let me know, is of posthumous releases of pieces releases, not just albums or streaming releases or physical copies, CDs, LPs, whatever. Earliest copy I could find of a posthumous release just in sheet music, just in music in general, was Beethoven in the 1800s. They were constantly releasing posthumous pieces of his writing and of his works. So that's the earliest I could find. This video will be kind of a short one, about like 15-20 minutes or so after I edited down everything. But I kind of just want to talk about the Sophie review and how it made me feel and pay respects as I did, and this felt like a good excuse to get together and do that. Before I leave, I'm gonna actually show you these geese that are also coming out here to give their love to the graves. They've been following me since I walked up here. And there's so many geese. There's like 20 to 40 of them out here. This is one of 2 or 3 packs I saw while I'm out here. So yeah, just remember to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought about this video. Let me know If you liked any of the albums I've talked about in this video, what you've been listening to, recommendations to cover on the channel and listen to, and what you think about the concept and setting of this video and how the channel's been going, you know? Or just comment what you ate for lunch. Who cares? I'll see y'all in another one soon, especially probably by next weekend or so when I do another Friday wrap-up. Love y'all. Stay kelpy. Bye.